They're still on there. They're on BoardDocs.
I had the same question. So I was,
Wondering if I missed something.
I didn't look at BoardDocs either because I don't ever look at the work session because it's like,
You know what date was
Wait,
that?
you were in the minutes.
yeah.
Monday.
You already know.
2,
This
3.
is from Mr. Man. The mic's on.
And it says a
Thank
word
you.
from.
He's forwarded it to me. I'm not sure why I didn't get that. I have to return and ask him about it.
Way to be a leader, Terry. I appreciate it.
Me.
I'll forward it to you because it has. It has a link to it.
He's turning 100.
Oh, that'd be great.
Isn't that cool?
Thing
On the 21st.
is.
Did you sign your own? No, you didn't sign your own.
Actually, need to go to make sure.
Right on the bottom one, is that?
It's not as many.
I signed the top one and this one and the
But then you
bottom
can
one.
download.
I'm like going, I signed
And
it.
it's, oh, yeah.
Are these all the same? No, they're not.
there you go.
Okay, now I know.
Yeah.
Oh, that turned out good.
Yeah, I did. So let me forward it to you and I'll send you that.
Thank you.
All right, guys, it's 6 o'clock. The first thing that we wanted to talk about, as a group, I thought it would be important to first talk about, with our new council members, how communication is supposed to flow in a city manager form of government, and then talk about ways to access Panita and Tom that would be beneficial for everybody involved. So with the city manager form of government, as you guys know, we have 3 employees. We have Tom Sarvey, our city manager, and we have Panita, our city attorney, and then we have our city judge. And so everything that flows to our staff should flow through Tom. And that's an important thing for everybody to know when talking to city staff. You can't give directives to like Mike, the chief of police, but you can tell Tom your thoughts and then he can decide which way he wants to go about it. Does anybody have any questions on how that's supposed to work? No? Okay. The real reason I thought this would be important is because Tom gets bombarded all the time. People are in his office all the time, and then they'll take up a lot of his time, and then he gets, he has to stay here for a lot of hours, more than he should, to be honest with you. And then as well as Panita, I know she gets bombarded a lot as well. So I wanted to talk with both staff and city council and decide a good way that we can get information to Tom and Panita in a way that's both helpful for you as a council member, but also helpful for us as a whole, and then doesn't take all of their time out of their day when they have other meetings and stuff planned. So I do know that Lynn was going around and she was scheduling one-on-ones with everybody, which I think is a really great place to start. And I know we have a lot of budget stuff coming up, but I think that's a good thing, that if you feel like you need access to Tom or Panita on a regular basis, that we could schedule some one-on-ones with them. Not to say that they don't welcome your questions and concerns, but I think it's better for them if they know it's on their agenda that day, instead of just coming in all the time and then them getting pulled away from their other daily work. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I think for general things, it's a great idea to have those one-on-ones. Maybe if you have a special project or something, like you're working with Benita on something, schedule a time, not just show up, but schedule that time. The other thing I would suggest is if you do have something that's urgent or you feel you can't wait until you get to meet them, an email or something, not just show up, but give them some heads up of what's going on. Maybe include the whole council on your concern. Maybe you can get an answer from council rather than absorbing a lot of the time that Tom and Panita have available.
All right. Do you have anything to add, Tom, about your preferences on communication?
Well, I do know typically if you have a concern that comes to me, or if you ask, for some action or something, I usually try to respond to the entire council with that information. So that way everybody kind of knows what I've been asked and what I've done on that. I usually try to do that. I know I enjoy the discussions with council on their concerns and their different things, and I look forward to those. I welcome those. I know sometimes, like throughout the last couple of years, when it gets to be the direction to the city manager, there usually isn't a lot that comes from council as direction to me, and it would be beneficial if somehow through that the desires, pleasure of the council could go through the mayor to me, so that so that it is one voice coming to me from the 7, and that way I can definitely respond to that, back to the mayor. But that does take some communication behind the scenes a little bit, where the direction to me can come through one person, but that would be beneficial, so that I know it is acting within the council instead of one person's direction to me. So that's just a recommendation, but like I said, I really welcome the discussions that I have with council, and I don't want to put those to where I said, don't come talk to me.
Yeah.
But I think some of that direction that comes, that would be helpful to me if it could go through the mayor to me, either during the council meeting, to say, here's the direction from council, would you do this, this, and this? That way I can respond back to one individual on that.
Yeah, and honestly, the best way probably would be to contact me and get it on the agenda as either a discussion item or an actionable item if we need to. But then we can have that robust conversation as a whole, and then our directive comes from whatever the council,
Yeah.
at least 4 of us, right?
Yes.
4 or the quorum of the meeting.
Yeah, but if there is things you want me to check on or something's happening, just contact me.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
The day-to-day things like,
The
I saw a
day-to-day
water
things.
leak on
Yeah, there's a leak here.
the ball fields or,
Or what's up with this over here, I'm totally
Yeah.
good. But if it comes to actual direction, to the city manager, it would be beneficial to have one source that I could go back to with that information, or back to everybody.
does anybody have any questions or concerns on that, or?
I agree with Tom. If we just go through you and then you can contact Tom in my own viewpoint. Because then, like you said, there's just one voice.
Yeah. Yeah, it works good if we can at least, because there's been in times in the past, and it's not just with Tom, but with every city manager, a council member will come and they'll say, I want this done.
Yeah.
But that's one of 7, right? And so you need 4, majority, to be able to give him any kind of directive. You can't just
Right.
demand he go and, I don't know,
Right.
certain things. Yes, Steve? Or
So,
Councilmember Singer, sorry, thank you.
so you're gonna set up some methodology for us to do this?
Well, you can always email me or text me if you want something on the agenda.
Wouldn't we have to agree that it needs to be on the agenda?
No, I think you can have discussion items on the agenda at any time.
So you'd end up with 7 discussion items?
what do you see as a better method?
I don't see a better method. I'm asking how we're gonna go through this process.
Yeah.
Because this has always been a bone of contention.
Yeah, it
How
has.
how to communicate, because you're supposed to communicate as one.
Yeah,
And how do you go about that process if you have 7 different things you want to talk about, then you have 7 different discussion items, and then you're gonna get direction from those 7 discussion items? Is that my understanding correctly?
I don't think everybody would always
It's
have
never gonna
7
be 7.
discussion
No,
items.
but I mean, it could.
It, potentially it could, yes.
Right, but that's the method we're gonna be discussing, or we're going to,
Well, that's why we're here, to discuss what works best for everybody.
okay,
So I don't know what that looks like.
neither do I.
To me, right now,
Like a
that
mess.
makes the most sense in my brain, but maybe somebody has better input, and that's why we're here. So, Councilmember Garner, or Vice Mayor Garner?
That's kind of how we do it already, right? If we want to get on the agenda, we reach out to you and say, hey, we'd like to put this in for discussion or,
Action.
yeah, so we're pretty much doing that. We're just saying, let's make sure we always do it this way, or that's what we're looking for is that not the process we're doing right now? At least to get on the agenda.
For the agenda, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I just think that, and it's been every sitting manager, right, Steve, since
Oh,
we've been
God,
on
yeah.
the council, that has, they have a council member that comes in and says, I want this done.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then they're kind of felt like they're put in a box because one of their 7 bosses is telling them to do something. But it's better if we at least have some kind of discussion, and that needs to be in a public forum, because we can't do that by email and say, hey, the 4 of us want this, or the 7 of us want this. So I think the only way, to me, that makes sense is to have it as a discussion item on the agenda. Councilmember Lumen?
May I also suggest that Tom be given the confidence that if one of us do ask or demand for you to do something, you say, that'd be a great item for discussion, and not just run with what's said. Or if we are taking you have scheduled a half an hour for us and we take 3 hours, at half an hour, please ask us to leave. You have to,
Or Lynn
know
can,
what I mean?
Lynn can ask.
but you need to have the confidence to be able to remind us of that we are one of 7 and not your boss in entirety.
Okay.
And that goes for Penita as well.
Yeah. I would confidently say that everybody on this council is okay with you setting boundaries with your time. And also, when you need to set boundaries on, well, that sounds like a council decision, let's bring that to a discussion item. I think all of us would feel comfortable in that. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion on that topic? I just think it's important that we discuss it and get it firmed up while we can. We are headed into budget season, which comes with a lot of questions. And I'm sure Tom has a lovely budget schedule coming for us soon. That is a great time to get all your questions asked about any budgetary, any department level questions. And we will have 3 readings, so there's also time after the work sessions that you're gonna have plenty of ample of time to get those done. But if you feel like anytime those work sessions or those 3 readings aren't gonna be enough time for you, please feel free to schedule some time with Tom to go over any big ticket questions, because he loves to talk budget. That is something he's very passionate about, and I think he would gladly do that for you guys. All right. And then I really have been thinking a lot too about communication among council. You know, there's a lot of rules about how we can communicate, and that gets a little precarious sometimes. Are you guys comfortable with how I've been communicating so far with you with the bigger issues by calling you and talking to you individually, or is there a way that you see that would be better?
I like the way that you communicate. You know, either you call or you text. It's perfect with me. So I have a question for other people that that I know,
Sure.
right, on the
Yes.
council. So if I'm able to go out to lunch with you, can I go out to lunch with you and talk about anything with the city, or no? Because I'd hate to reach out to a city council person and then put them on a spot of a discussion that we should not be having.
Yeah.
So I don't want to create a meeting with the city council person.
I'm going to defer that question to our law,
Yeah,
our lawyer.
It's very confusing.
It is
Thank
very
you.
Yeah.
So
confusing.
certainly you bring up a very important topic of Open Meetings Act. And so there is a risk that even with, so if you're discussing something that's going to have an action, you can bring it up, hey, council, we need to discuss this during the next meeting. It's going to be an agenda item, but not discuss it because that needs to be left for the open discussion to not violate the Open Meetings Act. In terms of having lunch, you also risk, you know, what if Tanya comes along and then Daryl's like, oh, what are you guys doing at the table? And pretty soon you've got a quorum and you've got an unnoticed open meeting. So there's a kind of a gray area in terms of if you're discussing business, city business, be very careful about not violating the Open Meetings Act and then making decisions on action items that require a vote by council before you proceed and make a decision. But to go to lunch and say like, you know what, I just want to get to know you better because you're my council, my co-councilor.
Yeah.
That's fine. If I'm, if me and Steve go out, if me and Steve go out to, like if I'm teaching him how to paint,
Hold on. Hold on one second.
yes, sir,
As long as we're in a meeting,
yeah.
always refer to each other as counselor or something.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I
Right.
apologize.
It's just a formal,
Sure,
she's always the mayor.
yeah. Oh, okay, yeah,
Does that
I
make sense?
apologize, Mayor.
Yeah, just
And so if I'm out and I'm teaching Counselor Sanger how to paint, and I go, we're painting on there, and I go, what do you think about this? What do you think? And it's a topic that concerns the city, and we start communicating. Is that violation?
If it's just the two of you, no. But then if you start asking Counselor Lumen and then Counselor Garner, then you start
Oh,
getting
yeah.
into an unauthorized meeting. And that's referred to as a rolling quorum, because then you start bringing in all the members, even though you don't bring in everybody, but you bring in enough that it should properly occur during a meeting.
So yes,
Also, yeah.
Yeah.
we
We could
can-
discuss it,
Yes, but don't ask him the same question.
Right.
And then her, because that's four, and now
Right.
we've had a meeting.
right. I think what I'll do is, so I'll still have personal relationships with people, but then city council business, I'll just keep at the city council. Because I'm afraid that then I'd be like, wow, I wonder what Daryl thinks about this, or, Terry. So it's best for me, at least, just to keep it at the city council.
Councilwoman Lumen.
So, with caveat, I do think there
Councilman.
also is a benefit in the experience of our other council members too. What is the history of our water problem, and asking Councilmember Sanger those questions because he has a history of it. I wouldn't see a problem with that. It's not, we're not asking for any kind of action, we're just asking for the information, right?
Right. If I may, sometimes when you have a question, and it's going to be, it's going to be a discussion item, it's always helpful for staff so for example, instead of asking, hey, other counselors, what's the history on this? We've got a great resource in staff. And if for example, what is the history on water issues? We can pull in resources and give you a more comprehensive. Well, as a matter of fact, members of the council, this has been an issue since the 1960s or wherever. I'm making this up. So,
You're not far off.
right. So that, and then this is kind of a chronology of things. That way, there's a little more information to go off of. So we are happy to do that with sufficient notice.
Yeah, absolutely. Councilmember Patterson.
So, being a new council person, I know what you've said and everything that's been discussed, and I have a tendency to agree with it. But if I was searching for information, like I've asked for, to go through the water treatment system from the wells all the way in through the distribution system. I want to see it all. And so do I have to go through Tom or
Yes.
the mayor?
No, you said it right, because they're his employees.
On that note as well, we do want to plan in the spring when it's a little warmer.
When-
Yeah, we want to get that on the schedule to go and do the springs and the water treatment plant and the wastewater treatment plant again, because it is a beneficial tour, and to hear from the city staff is really beneficial. So that will be a work session when it's warmer out. Councilmember Patterson.
Yes.
And you ask a great question, because especially not having the same knowledge base as some of the other more tenured council members, you would like to get some background, and it's absolutely appropriate to ask those types of questions. And staff Tom and I are always happy to respond. We'll also respond to the full council so that everybody gets the same information, because who knows where there's gaps. But sometimes, truly there are questions that are as easy, that it's just to you. It really, hey, where do I find this on the website? Like, I'm happy to just tell you. I don't need to tell everybody and spam their email with things they already know.
Absolutely. One more thought on that. I think it's too important to state that if you do reach out to a fellow council member, just be careful not to ask them how they're going to vote on a topic, because that one will definitely get you in trouble. All right. Any other questions or concerns about that? Great. Awesome. Okay. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the strategic planning sessions we're going to be creating. I just wanted to throw that out there. We will be having those once Tom is past or in between budget. I think we'll get those on the books, but those are another good opportunity to work with city staff and city leadership, so we can work together as a city on our goals and our plans for the city going forward. So just so you know, that's coming in our future. I don't know if we have any dates thrown out yet, but.
Yeah, we don't have any current dates. I do have scheduled with my department head starting tomorrow to go over the budget work papers. And that will take me about a week to get through all the departments. And then I have scheduled check-ins now tonight with council. And I would like to hear some of your ideas, just kind of, generally. And then what we will do is prepare a preliminary draft of the budget, kind of where we're at and what money we're gonna have for different things. And then that's when I would feel that we would schedule a strategic planning session with council. When you have that information, you kind of understand what we have, where we're at, that'd be a good time to go over council initiatives and to come up with a strategic plan. We performed one in 2023, was the last one that we had. We would have to decide whether to start from there or whether we kind of want to start fresh in what we do. So there are a few things with that. I would guess that we would probably want to look at that about the 1st of March as council. And I've usually seen these where we get public input as well. On a Saturday morning, we have our department heads there with, you know, their projects and different things, and have the community come in and be able to talk about different projects and things. But I would like to get that through council, to get your ideas, to get, you know, be able to put that into a document that we could hang on the walls throughout City Hall and throughout the city facilities. So,
Councilmember Singer?
Back in 2012, the city did a master plan. We still have that master plan. It's still, it's good through 2030, at least that's what it says on it, is it's good through 2030. And quite a bit of our strategic planning is mentioned in the master plan, and this was done in 2012. So it might be a good idea to have copies of that so they can read through it and know this is what has been discussed. You'll see a lot of beautification. You'll see a lot about water. You'll see that because it's in the master plan from 2012. So it might be a good idea to be able to go over that so we can check off our list of things that we are seeing, and then what staff would be bringing to you about what they want to do, and does it fit in the master plan itself, which is the encompassing overall plan for the city. And then be able to use that as the framework to set your strategic ideas up.
I think that's a great idea.
correct. So we have that master plan, and I have given that to our community development department.
Okay.
And what our plan is there is that we're not gonna rewrite that, but we want a working copy of that as to what it is. And then from within, what we will have discussions. If there's items in there since the last 10 years that have changed, and we want to bring to council basically a current version of that. And Councilman Sanger is absolutely correct in that the strategic planning comes off of the master planning. That's the first step that you do. So our community development director has been tasked with that currently, and I believe that he's through the document. We just need to make sure that everything is current and bring to council any variances from that original document for your approval, and then you're correct, that will lead into strategic planning.
Great. All right. The next thing was, and I know this has been a controversy in the past with the past council, but it's been brought up several times about establishing some kind of code of conduct, maybe not code of ethics, but code of conduct for our city council members. Some people call it ethical guidelines, some people call it code of conduct, some people call it code of ethics. And I know the previous mayor and some of the other council members were really not for that. And the reason they had stated they were against that is they don't want to tie the council to anything specific. I have a different thought process on that. I think it's just a good generalized statement to the public that we will abide by, well, here's a good I found one from the city of, or the town of Evansville, but it said to provide a clear statement of the minimal standards of ethical conduct expected by members of the governing body, the mayor and town council members, and establish expectations for compliance of the adopted standards and statutes. And they call it the Code of Ethics and Conduct is intended to describe the manner in which the governing body should treat one another, town staff, employees, department heads, residents, and others they come in contact with while serving as a member of the governing body. I don't think it's meant to be punitive. I think it's meant more to just make a generalized statement that we as a governing body want to uphold a certain standard for ourselves as council people. But I want to get everybody's thoughts on it before we pursue it any further, because if, Councilmember Lewman and I are the only ones that are interested, there would be no point to put a lot of time and effort into researching it or having Panita help us research it. But I'm just going to throw it out there and see what your guys' thoughts are. Councilmember Elliott?
Myself, I think you should, if you're not bullying somebody or intimidating somebody, I think that's fine, and communicating with everybody. But myself, I talk a certain way, and I don't want to, say I'll do this if it's not in my character to. So I think as long as you're not bullying somebody or intimidating or, twisting their arm, you better vote this way, and you're communicating correctly with each other. That's my feeling on it.
Okay. Councilmember Sanger?
The state of Wyoming has a fairly robust ethics code. There's a lot of them in there. A code of conduct makes sense. The ethics are there by state statute. They exist by statute. So we don't need law. What we need is a conduct. Which is different than the law itself.
Absolutely.
Because the law you just follow. The conduct of treating each other specifically, that's different. If that's what you're referring to. But
Yes.
the ethics is pretty robust as it is.
Yeah,
It's thick,
it is.
way thick. There's, 5 statutes
Yeah.
that are constantly mentioned. And cities and towns are under statute 15, and there's 286 pages to that. So it's thick. The rules are very well and clear about what we can and cannot do. What you're referring to is how we speak to each other, how we treat each other.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think it would be a resolution. Is that correct? Anita?
Yes, Honorable Mayor, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Excuse me. To explain the difference between a resolution and ordinance is our resolutions are intended to be short-term, and the specific language of a resolution could be tailored to, if the council so desires, to implement a code of conduct that would apply only for the next 2 years. And that is absolutely something that this council can do. So it would not bind future administrations or different memberships. Another code of conduct that I am familiar with, not intimately, but I've referenced it in some of my previous communications to the prior administration, is the city of Laramie. And within their code of conduct, they set forth how meetings are conducted, how they address each other. They discuss nuances in regard to appointment to boards and commissions. And those are some of the details our current, so for example, our current council, when appointed to a board or commission, is as a voting member. However, there are other municipalities and in other jurisdictions that they are as advisors, and they attend, but only to see what's going on. And there are others, such as in Fort Collins, where They are just kind of the liaison, but they are not required to attend. But they are required to report back to council after reviewing minutes and kind of being familiar. So there's a lot of different things you can do to tailor responsibilities and roles for this council. In our ordinances, there is appointment to boards, but it doesn't state that a council member does need to be there, that it's only in a certain format, but there is some precedent. But those are things that can be changed through a resolution in a code of conduct, or even by ordinance if that would be the intention.
Sure. Any other council member Singer?
You gave us that, right? Because I asked the question
Yes.
initially, and you gave that to us. And some of our boards require voting membership, and some of them, the appointment can be by the entire council, and some of it can be by solely is in the purview of the mayor. So those things, that's what you're referring to, is that those documents? Because I've seen the
Yes.
Laramie one, and it's very detailed, and pretty much to the point about how we should conduct ourselves, and then how they're appointed. I was the one that had heartburn about that, not anybody else, as far as I know. So the Laramie one is an interesting one, and they just updated it, didn't they?
I
Not too
believe
long
so.
ago. Because I read it 4 or 5 years ago, and then I read it again, and it's not the same thing.
Right, and the Laramie Council, and I'm actually just pulled it up right now, and I'm flipping through it. It also is where council puts their proceedings during agenda, and this is how we're going to conduct public comment on non-agenda items. This is how we're going to do the consent agenda. This is how we're going to do X, Y, Z. So it provides some more clarification. There are also, what types of items can be on the consent agenda? How do you do a motion? How do you properly address your fellow council members? Do you begin with Councilor Elliott, or do you have a more relaxed decorum?
The one that I pulled up, it talks a lot about acting in the public interest, conflict of interests, but also it talks about conduct. And I think that's one of the most important things, is how the town council should conduct themselves together and how they should conduct themselves with the public, especially when they come to our meetings. So I'll be glad to, if everybody's in agreement that we should at least explore this further, provide what I got to Panita, but also then we can reference, and we can definitely have a workshop on it later to further. Councilwoman Lumen?
So I agree, we do need a code of conduct as far as how we treat each other and treat city employees. Couple of questions for Panita. Is the resolution, is that only for 2 years, or can it go further?
It can go until resolutions by their
Nature?
definition are temporary in nature. And sometimes if you don't have an end date, those can extend indefinitely. However, if you want something to be the law anywhere, the legislature of this body, then it should be appropriately go through ordinance. But to hold this council to certain conduct and requirements of resolution is certainly appropriate.
Another question is although the state is robust when it comes to ethics in regards of taking money or taking services and that kind of thing, it doesn't touch on how you treat each other. There's nothing in there that says I can't go to his office and demand whatever I want to demand, or yell out the police officer for not giving a ticket to my neighbor. Nothing in there about that.
Actually, there is. That's personal gain, and that's
Oh.
included in Title IX, Title IX, Chapter 13 of the Wyoming State Statutes. And
Or yelling at them for not doing their job the way I think they should do their job.
exactly, and actually, the Wyoming State Statutes do clarify that the employees and operations, that's within the purview of the city manager.
So the other thing is, there's nothing in there that says if Councilman Garner dropped dead tomorrow, no offense, but if he did,
Roll.
we have nothing written down on how to replace him. There's no
There is.
process to replace him.
There is.
There is actually
Yeah.
within the election statutes of
Yeah.
the Wyoming statutes.
Yeah.
In the event of a vacancy, it requires a special election. And so-
Special election,
Yeah. They have there's a whole
Section.
section on just that part. If they're like, they get in trouble really bad and they gotta go to jail. They're out of here because they're in jail.
right?
So you're gonna fill the seat. There's a whole step method to how you go about this process, how you hold the election. If it's a ward election, if it's a general election, if Miss Jackie, for some reason or another, is the one that gets in trouble, then you have to do it citywide because she's the at-large. But if it's just you, then it's only your ward. Because it's Ward 2.
So you remain with just 6 members until that's done. Then how come 2 years ago, when things happened, it was everybody send in a request form and we're going to pick the new the council will pick the new council member? That was that according to this?
Not
that she's
according
talking
to
about?
that, no. No,
Then
there's
is that
an
new?
actual, you would have had to have gone through a whole election process. It would have had to have occurred. And that would have
But
been,
that's not what
but that
was
would have
kind of
been the county
presented at
clerk.
first.
that would have been the
right.
county clerk that would have administered that election. We can't administer our own.
Okay,
We don't have the authority to do so by state law. So they would run
questions
it,
on that. Right,
and they would run it in that ward. or
again, that's
townwide.
not
Right.
what
That's
occurred
how-
in the past.
Yeah, and you would find that, I think it's under 15, like it's 286 pages. They have a whole long list of how that process works.
Okay,
And when you look it up, they'll give you that. And it's for the very purpose that you said, in case something happens.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason they can't take their seat. You know?
Pick it up.
I'm just piggybacking off of what you said, sorry. So, no, but it is for that purpose. There is an actual methodology, because we're not the first people to ever sit in these seats. They figured it out a while ago.
So the fact you didn't know about it 2 years ago, is that a default of not knowing that
Not
existed?
ever having had the process be necessary.
Okay,
At that point, it wasn't, I don't know if it had ever been necessary.
right.
So it's like building something that's broken, or building for something that's broken that's never been broken. You rarely build something.
Councilmember Elliott, you had?
So I think because we meet every 2 weeks, and we don't meet, am I right, 2 weeks? Okay, so we're not able to meet with each other, and if there's a topic that comes up, and I say, hey, council member Patterson or Vice Mayor Gardner, and we're trying to figure it out by talking, right? I don't want it to be shut down because they're like, okay, well, you're being a little bit too loud. You know, you guys are. You need to communicate and get the information out to each other, because we can't do it outside of the council
Sure.
meeting. So for conduct, but I'm not saying, to bully anybody or be mean
Yes.
to anybody, but to have conversation, because we're gonna have differences of opinion.
Absolutely. And I think there's a difference there, Councilmember Elliott. We're gonna disagree.
Correct.
It's gonna happen. It's happened many times.
And
But
like-
making sure that we talk to each other in an appropriate way,
Sure.
that we're not calling people names there's a whole barrage of things that can happen. I think it's just to make sure that we hold ourselves to a certain standard,
Sure.
so that we talk to each other and the public and our staff in a way that doesn't leave anybody
Yeah.
feeling like they were bullied.
I think it's worth it if you both looked at the, different cities and put it together for something for Rawlins. So I'm for it.
Councilmember Louie?
If we progress with this, I would like to get together with Panita, and as I've gone through quite a few ethics and code of conducts from different cities, and just come up with something to bring to the council to vote on.
Sounds good. Here. There's one more.
Thank you. I'll take that on. How's that?
All
If
right.
that's something we're going to pursue.
Oh, Councilmember Garner, or Vice Mayor Garner, sorry.
You're good. Would it be worth making a small committee to put something together, or do you think we could just do this?
Do you have
Put that
interest?
much time into it, or do we got a pretty good idea, put something together with just?
That is, that's at the council's pleasure how they would like to do that. A small committee to come up with something is certainly appropriate with amongst yourselves, because you are who would be beholden to it, and then present it to the rest of council for further discussion before finalizing and to allow modification and changes.
Sure.
So there's a number of ways you can certainly do that.
Do you have interest?
I was just thinking if just to help streamline it, or just to get it so it's put together really well. I was just thinking maybe we could do a committee, or we could.
Is everybody good with that?
If you have council members on the committee, there'll only be 3.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't have more than that.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? Or were you thinking other employees?
Everybody, maybe this level, one of you two, and then somebody from staff. I don't know how to put a committee together.
Yeah.
So
Councilmember Patterson.
This is for Panita. Are we required, with the state having their own policy, or whatever they call those, are we required as a municipality to write our own, or can we choose to accept the state's version and vote it in as what we will go by?
Absent the city implementing a different, more stricter policy, the state statutes regarding ethics applies. So there's a difference, ethics versus conduct. Ethics is like the ethical things to do. And there's certain requirements, you can't break the law, you can't have a...
Take bribes.
Yeah, take bribes, you can't do personal gain. You can't, and personal gain is, you can't come to Tom and make him,
Mow your lawn.
yeah, exactly. So there's certain ethical
Only if it's
things,
the mayor.
but then conduct is more about your decorum in terms of this is how we're gonna, so it's almost like your own bylaws, if that makes more sense. This is how we're going to conduct meetings. Meetings are gonna be, we're gonna change, instead of Tuesdays at 7:30, they're gonna be Mondays at 1:15, right?
And that's a good time to bring up that there has been suggestions that if we do not have a work session, we start at 6 regardless of a work session or not. So just keep that in mind when we're thinking about this, because then we'd be out earlier on the nights we don't have work sessions.
Madam Mayor, that is actually in an ordinance.
Yeah, we would have to
That
change that,
the
yes,
ordinance.
yes,
It's the very-
absolutely.
It's at the beginning of the ordinances
Yeah.
that states that the council meeting starts at
7:30,
7:30.
yeah.
And it's held the first and third Tuesdays of every month.
Yes.
And it also has in there about holidays, if it's a Tuesday.
Yeah.
things like that. So.
We would have to have 3
change-
readings,
Yeah,
for
it's a
sure.
little more than a
Yes.
conduct.
Yes.
It would have to be changed through an ordinance change.
Absolutely.
The reason I asked the question is in the federal level and some of the state level, all you have to do is exceed their standards to write your own. As long as we go above and beyond, what they have,
We're already held.
we have to be at or higher than their standard, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Councilmember Sanger? Oh, you good? Okay. All right, last thing I had, before we pass it on to Tom, was the talk about town hall meetings. Tom asked me to put this on the agenda because he's been asked several times by certain council members that we should have town hall meetings. And he wants some guidance from us on what those look like and yeah, I'll hand it over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are several ways that we could do town hall meetings. I think the traditional way that usually comes to mind is that we have a topic and that we have a speaker get up and speak about that topic, or a group of speakers about that, and then take public questions or public comment back from that at that time. If that's what council has in mind for us to do, we're happy to schedule those, do those that way. We have seen some where public comment is what we seek, so that, you know, they can come in and actually visit with council people while they're at a, you know, a town hall, and that we could have different places that they could come and talk, and then projects that they can communicate with the public on, and different things. Where we've struggled as staff to be able to perform these town halls is on the topics and on the different things that we would want town halls to be. So we had one a few years ago about the water situation, where people spoke and they came in with different questions. If council had certain topics that they would like for a town hall, we're happy to try to put those together. Where it's the staff trying to come up with those topics and the way to handle that, those town halls, is where we usually try to schedule a work session, you know, in those things, so that we could present the FEMA flood zone to you and those types of things, instead of like a public where we would speak and ask, you know, have questions from council. I know members of the council have expressed the desire just to have time to be able to talk with the community on different things, and we could have like roundtable discussions on the different topics that affect council and those types of things. And so what we're basically asking for guidance on is the manner council would want us to hold those in, and then as well as to what topics would be worthy of a town hall meeting. Several of those, like I said, we have brought up during work sessions, but that does not include public comment or public feedback. During that time, they'd have to come to the meeting and then speak during the public comment. But that's the guidance that we seek from council on those. We're happy to arrange for any type of setting that council would like on that, and any topic that council would like. There again, if council had a topic, you could always communicate that through the mayor to myself, and then we could arrange for that, you know, through the direction from the mayor, through the direction to the city manager, and we're happy to do it that way. We are happy to hear your ideas. If you come in and say, do you think this is worthy of a town hall, we would be happy to discuss that with you. But we haven't had those to date, and I know council has asked for those off and on, but we just would like to know the setting that you would like those to take place in.
Does anybody have any feedback for Tom? Councilwoman Lumen?
I think water's a big issue. I would like to see, and I don't know how the other council feels about having a town hall about water, and having our experts on water being there and being able to answer questions. But I also like the idea of one where, and I don't know if you could set it up, you know, per ward, where two people are able to talk to the public about different things. Or were you thinking we're all in the same place but separated, like with tables and something like that?
No, that's what
That's what you're asking?
That's what we would ask.
Yeah, and I don't know how, would that be considered a meeting, even though we're,
We would
yeah, because
advertise.
we're all
we
be
could
together?
advertise
Because we're
it.
all
But it'd be advertised.
It would all, yeah, it would be
Advertised?
an officially noticed public meeting with whatever the topic is. I mean, and some of it, it almost sounds like at WHAM, they have the reception to meet with representatives, state and federal representatives. So I don't know if that's what you're looking, maybe, might be something just to know what's going on in people's minds. I mean, this is where we have direct, need some guidance and are happy to comply.
Councilmember Elliott?
Could you split it from having a topic and then into roundtable with community members?
Absolutely.
I believe if it's all the wards, that might be too great of people that show up, in my opinion. If it's per ward, then you'd have less people and you'd be able to have more time. But I would like to see that where it would be a topic and then roundtable with the community members. Either way, with all wards or with by ward.
Councilmember Singer?
The concern I have is if we're supposed to speak as one voice, but then you sit down and have an individual conversation, I don't know what you're saying. I don't know
Right.
what she's saying. I don't know what he's saying. So we're not speaking with one voice. We're speaking our particular opinion on whatever the topic is. That puts us in the very same position we don't want to find ourselves in now, which is why we have to have discussions so the mayor can tell the city manager what he's doing. I don't know how you do that, because then it just becomes a meeting. And we're supposed to be providing the same information to everyone. They're the ones that are going to be different. It's how our response to that needs to be the same. They can come and ask you about catching a dog. Is that in state statute? Actually, it is. So can you let your dog off leash? No, you cannot. You have an opinion about that? You can't. Your opinion has to be this opinion. And that's where the problem occurs, is right there. And I don't know how you get around that. In no way can you sit down and have a conversation with a group of people and it's just you. I don't know if we're aware of this. You are never not a counselor. Never. You go to the grocery store, you're a counselor. You go to McDonald's, you're still a counselor. You go across to Starbucks because that's where you really want to get your coffee, still a counselor. So no matter when you're in the public, you're always a counselor. It doesn't matter if you're in the bathroom, still a counselor. So anything you say, even though you might be talking to your best friend, if you're in public, you're a counselor. So whatever comes out of your mouth is supposed to be a generalized consensus of this body of 7. That's what it's supposed to be. I don't know how you get there. That's where I struggle, is I don't know how you get to that without it ending up being a meeting. So these are town halls to me. You have every right to come in here and sit down and ask your questions. By all means.
Councilmember Garner? Or
You-
Vice Mayor Garner?
You can go ahead since you guys
Oh,
were
I'm sorry. Go
kinda-
ahead, Councilmember Elliott.
Then I would say that it would be a good idea to meet monthly as a council in an open town hall meeting with anybody in town that wants to come. You could sit there and then they can ask you questions. So just going back, so what I was doing is gathering information, getting people together, talking, but me not giving any information or giving anybody any advice. It was to get the citizens together of my ward. But like you said, we need to speak in one voice. So the only way to do that, and if we are greater than 3 people meeting with a ward, then that is a meeting.
Right?
So,
And at the same time, you're speaking on behalf of all 7, whether
Correct.
it's 4 or 5 or 6. You are in fact speaking for all 7.
correct.
And that's where the rub comes from.
Yeah.
That's where it comes from.
So I would be for having a meeting once a month scheduled, a town hall, to where there's a topic and then a roundtable.
how do you control the roundtable response?
You don't. You let the citizens say whatever they want, and you let them have their
Right, but when
feelings
they
out.
ask you a question,
Well, if somebody asks a question here, we'd have to give them an answer. So
no,
we'd
actually,
have,
under
We
public
don't.
comment, we do not answer.
no, here you don't, right.
Right.
So they have 5 minutes of time to communicate,
Their concern.
correct. But then we have no communication back to them. In a roundtable, the person, they can say whatever they want.
And then you have to
If we.
answer.
you
And
have-
that's where the rub comes from. That's where it comes from, right there. You're expected to provide them with an answer.
So
That's difficult.
if you don't give them an answer, and so let's say that somebody comes up and they say, hey, I see that Vice Mayor Gardner got a big lifted truck driving down the street and it's diesel, fumes are going everywhere. So then we could say, well, maybe we could put it on the next agenda and we can discuss it.
And
But
they
thank
can
you
do
for
that
bringing
any-
us that information.
Oh, jeez.
And let me stop real quick. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Councilmember Gardner.
So I understand what you're saying with we need to have a common voice when we are discussing. I think that you have to have a common voice when you're saying, if somebody asks you, hey, if I do this, what are the rules on this? And you say, okay, these are the exact rules. Now, if you don't agree with them, you can say, I don't agree with them, and here's why. Because maybe it's something you want to change. I don't see if I give my perspective of or opinion on certain things that are in ordinance as a conflict or me speaking on your behalf, because I'm not. My opinion's my opinion, and if I say this is the rule, you'd have to follow it right now, but I agree we should make a change to it. I don't see the conflict there doing that, because that's our job, is to have the conversation. If somebody says, hey, look, this isn't working and this is why, and you say, well, actually that makes sense, I need to change that. If you can't have that back and forth because it's already law, so now I can't say, no, I don't agree with the law that exists as well. Does that make sense?
I'm saying that if you answer it in something that is less than that,
Okay.
right? So if you say the law is the law, I agree, the law is the law. You cannot receive specific benefit 913-103. You can't receive benefit from your position,
Right,
okay? You don't agree with that particular law, but that discussion happens with this group of people.
right.
That doesn't happen between us and that group of people. That happens in this group of people. That's the same thing, the United States Supreme Court, they're all sitting up there. That's 9 individual opinions that are coming. And they solve their problem by voting. And that's how they do it. Just a simple vote, the majority wins. That's how it works. But you would bring that back here for discussion here. And they have that opportunity every time under public comment. We're not going to comment back, but if they've got a really good idea, you can say, let's put that on the agenda next week. And then you can.
Let's say you had the answer for them. Could you provide the answer?
You're speaking on behalf of 7 people.
I don't want to cut this short, but I do want to leave some time for Tom and the purchasing policy, because that's super important. I think we can continue this conversation at our strategic planning, because I think that's a perfect time to have these talks.
I just wanted to add one more thing with the town hall meetings. The meetings that Councilman Elliott was talking about for his wards, and could we discuss that more next time as well? If we, when we discuss this, add the ward. I'm drawing a blank here, but what you were bringing up the other day, talking with your ward and how to go about that, maybe get that in there so we can look at like the ideas Ms. Mayberry had with how to go about it properly, so that all council members get the fair.
I think that's a good time with strategic planning and the
Yeah.
budget,
perfect.
because in her one recommendation, that would be a budgetary item that we designate a certain amount per counselor, or those kind of things. So I don't want to cut it short, but I do think we need to get to the purchasing policy, because that's going to be a big item. Is that okay? Oh, Councilman Lumen?
I know in the past also, when we had music in the park, there were council members set up to talk to their constituents. So that might be another possibility as well, to
Yeah.
do it instead of a big meeting and less expensive. That's it.
All right, thank you. I was thinking that too. All right, Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you for the purchasing policy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. So in November 2019, as the result of some audit findings through the auditor, the city wrote and adopted a version of a purchasing policy. And the main purpose of that policy was to address the findings in the audit that year. And that was adopted through resolution. And I know we've talked about resolutions and ordinances tonight a little bit. And since 2019, there's been substantial activity and change at the legislature level within the state statute. And so we, as staff, there are several things that staff has recommended as far as purchasing and through processes of those things that would fall under state statute that we could do, but the original purchasing policy that matched state statute contained different thresholds. So what the staff and I would like to recommend to council is that many of those items that we change those thresholds to keep up with where state statute will allow us to use. So anyway, as you look at our document, the one that's on the screen right now up here, you have what we call a redlined version. So what I did in the document that you see is we started with the original policy, and it's in black. And then anything that we added to the original policy is in purple. And then anything that we struck from the original policy to change is going to be in red and struck out within it. And what you will notice with this is that I would say 90% of the document's in purple. And so it's things that we just did not have in our policy originally that we would like to add to the policy. And there are several things, the thresholds and those types of things in there that we would like to adopt the state statute amounts and just increase our policy. So looking at the redline version that you have, we felt that we needed a discussion in here about purchasing for the readers and to define our view and what we feel our ethics and our approach is on purchasing. So the page 3 that you have, you'll see down below that we put the goals that we want this purchasing manual to uphold. And then on the next page, we listed 5 different goals of our purchasing processes throughout the city. We just want to ensure compliance with all the statutes. We want to get the best prices. We want to gain an understanding of the processes and the documents involved. And then down on page 4, we put in our City of Rawlins Procurement Code of Ethics. So we wrote a bunch of things in there that we feel very strongly about that we are as a city, and especially in our purchasing practices. So we describe in there what we feel accountability is towards our purchasing, towards impartiality, professionalism, And we've defined a lot of those things: transparency, conflict of interest, perception, all those different things. We wanted to make sure that we put into a document that we will constantly review with staff that makes purchases so that they understand the standard that the city has for them in their purchasing. So that has all been added in. On the bottom of page 8, we put in a series of what we call user do's and don'ts, things that the users can do and things that we ask them not to do. For instance, under the user do's and don'ts, do not, as an employee, authorize the purchase of any goods or services. Those can only be authorized by those that have the authority to authorize by the amount of that purchase, whatever threshold it falls. So as staff, they can't authorize the purchase of those goods. And so as you go through that, you will see that we are really trying to step up our practices with this. And so there is a lot of guidance there. On page 9 in the middle, we have a new section for disciplinary actions for violations that we did not have previously. And we've put this in so that we could hold staff accountable to these different standards that we've set. And a lot of what's in there is that we will note the violations, we'll work with staff with violations, and at some point it will come down to actual disciplinary action, write-ups and those types of things, and it could even come to criminal action as well if they continue to make unauthorized purchases. On the bottom of page 9, what I would like to point out here is that our practices as a city right now, we have purchase requisitions that the department head signs, the finance director, city manager signs to authorize those. What we have within our manual now is to ensure that we follow the proper procedure. So you can see that a requisition is the number one step. The purchase order is the second step. So once you have an authorized purchase order, you are authorized by the city to enter into whatever agreement to purchase those goods. If you do not have a purchase order in place, you really don't have authorization to make that purchase, because that's what the purchase order does. And if we go back through our purchasing practices, you will see many, many times that we have an invoice dated before the purchase order date, which is just the exact opposite of what we're looking for. So they go out, purchase goods, and then they get the invoice and come back and fill out the purchase rec, send it through the system. What we're going to watch for and document now is to make sure that a proper purchase order is in place before that purchase is made. And that shows proper authorization of that purchase. The next step is receiving. We want to make sure that after we get a proper purchase order, that we order the goods and that they are received. The goods that are on the purchase order, nothing more, nothing less than what is stated on there for authorization. And then the last step in there is the invoice that we get. That should match the other three. So you can see there on page 10 that we will begin to perform within the finance office a three-way match process. And what that process will do is we will take the purchase order that shows authorization, we will receive the shipping documents, or at least something from the department signing off that all those goods were received in those quantities. And then we will match that to the invoice. And all three of those documents will have to match to show proper authorization received and that they were billed. And at that point, we will put that transaction onto the warrant list to come before council for approval to be paid. But currently, we do not strictly adhere to this currently. And that's why we want this in policy, and we want the staff to know that we are watching these things, and this is how you make proper purchases. And so we will get out within the next few weeks to each department throughout the city, and we will do training on this module so that it is clear what our expectations are to all of the different departments. The next change that I would like to share with you in here, and you can read through the other changes, is on page 12. Currently, we do not use what we call a petty cash system. So when staff run to Walmart for a notebook or for pens or stuff, they come and get a credit card from the finance office. And they go down with the credit card, which is whatever the limit is on that credit card, and they're able to go kind of get what they want to get and those different things. And so what we propose is that each department maintain a petty cash balance of $200. And what that would be is actual dollar bills, change that is locked up, okay, that the director has under lock and key. And when people come and have those purchases, they can get a description of what they're going to Walmart to buy, and then they can take out actual cash, give that to them to go, and then they bring back that receipt that has it exactly documented what it was, and that receipt gets filed in the petty cash fund. And at the end of the month, the department will reconcile the petty cash fund and ask for a request to be reimbursed for the amounts back up to $200. And as we issue that back to them, all of those petty cash transactions will be posted to our general ledger so that it follows through the accounting processes. So that is new to here that we would like to propose. Currently, within our existing policy, we talk about the use of blanket purchase orders. But I can say right now, finance does not issue any blanket purchase orders. We just do not operate in that fashion. So we want to revitalize blanket purchase orders. And what we are referring there is that if you're within a department and you use a vendor repeatedly throughout the month for like smaller transactions, right now you have to get a purchase requisition every time that you go. So if you're in the shop area and you need custodial supplies or whatever, and you spend once a day going to Ace Hardware or wherever, what we will do is issue a purchase order for a predetermined amount, like $500, and they will go to that store each day and use that purchase order so that they're authorized to go. We're going to give blanket authorization up to an amount, and each time that they go and bring the invoice back, it will be posted against that purchase order, and the amount authorized will be decreased by the amount of that purchase, so that within a month you could have 20 transactions on the same purchase order, but you don't have to constantly go back and get a new purchase rack. It'll just go on the same blanket. We will reconcile those at the end of the month and either add the amount back in, or we will reissue a new blanket purchase order authorizing up to that amount. The reason that I would like to use these is that a purchase order will encumber the funds on our general ledger within our budget, so that department heads know how much they have left within their budgets. So anything on a purchase order will come out of the amount available out of that budget, like it's already earmarked and it's encumbered for that purpose. So we would like to start that practice of issuing blanket purchase orders. The actual purchase order process 3 remains about the same. The significant change that we're asking council to approve tonight is at the top of page 15. Towards the top, you will see a table there. Currently, any transaction that is below $500, currently the finance director has to sign off on that, as well as the department head. It takes 2 signatures, 2 approvals for every transaction. Anything over $500 has to have the city manager approval on that purchase rec in order to get that authorized. If we look at the amounts of purchases, I don't think we have very many under 500 anymore. And so I believe that amount is really antiquated within the amount. So what we propose is to go from 0 up through $1,500 and have the department head themselves be able to approve those transactions outside of the finance director or the city manager. They're able to produce those purchase orders. Now that is putting a lot of trust within the department head, because if they go over budget in that line item, there isn't that oversight for those amounts up to there. But we believe that we have to develop the financial side of our department head so that they understand that that's how that would work, and that they are responsible for things up through $1,500. And of course, we will watch if they go over budget. We'll find where they went over budget, and they will be held accountable for going over. But we would go 0 to 1,500, and then from 1,500 to 10,000 would require the finance director's approval, which is just a second set of eyes to make sure it's appropriate purchase for the city and that they have budget. And then from 10,000 to 75,000, it would require the city manager approval on it. And then by state statute, anything over 75,000 would need the approval of the city council. So we would bring those things to council to ensure they're properly bid and that all of those steps are followed. The previous state statute put the cap for items that would have to go out to bid at $35,000. So if we had a purchase of items that went up, that were just over 35,000, previously that would require it to go out to bid, to go before council, and all of those steps that are outlined. The state, about a year ago, I think it was last year's legislation, it might have even been 2 years ago, increased that amount to 75,000. And our city purchasing policy states in there clearly 35,000. So we would like to recommend that we increase that to follow state statute. But we are very clear in here that if the city manager says to put it out for bid, they will put it out for bid, even if it's under 75. We're not going to go carte blanche, up to 75. But if there's items in there that I feel need to be bid, or if council came to me and said, we think that should be put out for bid, I want to reserve that right to make sure that happens, so that we are buying the best product at the best price, and that we're not trying to observe the 75,000 rule.
do you want to cut it off here, Tom, and then we can answer any more questions at the?
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot more in here besides that.
Okay.
There's a lot of new things in here that we've added that are direction and that, like I said, are our expectations. But I believe those things, there is one more that I do want to mention real quickly, is on professional services, like engineering services and those types of services. State statute has always said that professional services is not subject to the bidding process if it's professional services. Construction is, but the actual engineering and those types of things are not. And so we wanted to recommend to council again that we follow state statute. But we've really made it clear in here that the city manager has the right to go out and to say, we want this put out for bid, even if it's below 75, so that, we just can't go out or constantly use those professional services. And so we've just wrote it in here so that we can match state statute with that. And the last thing in there is a definition of terms in there, and those are more educational than anything, and not all of those terms are used in the policy, but I feel that they're educational to council, to staff on those things so that they can understand what those things are. So.
All right. Thank you, Tom, and we will go ahead and take a recess because we need 5 minutes to go to the bathroom, and we'll be back at 7:30.
I have logged in, so if everybody wants to just refresh, you will be good to go.
Okay, refresh is this little button.
I hope this matches a lot of your experience. I would love to see
I don't
how.
have to log back in when I refresh, do
You just go to your regular meeting and it should say join the meeting. Pop up here. You can join the meeting. Before you weren't actually on the meeting. So there's nothing she was sending to us here. Now that you've joined the meeting, everything that you see, she sees. And
Is
so
this will
when
be the first time I have a computer?
Right. So now when you vote, it will show up for her.
Cool.
And sometimes it takes a second. I mean, you'll be sitting here going, okay, it's open. And you'll be sitting here going, okay, it's open. Why do I have it? Just sit. Eventually.
She's gonna take notes during her meeting. This is our city attorney.
No.
She's our lawyer. Make sure we don't get in trouble.
Hi.
Do you wanna sit up here?
How can we arrange that? Can we?
You wanna sit up there?
Let's see if I can find a chair.
Lucky old jury duty on next Tuesday.
For the city or for county. So my wife sent you stuff.
Evidently, yes, she did. I talked to her this morning to confirm that I would visit.
It's
I thought, oh no. Shoot, it's probably been 30 years since I served on a jury.
I've done 2 since I moved. One I wasn't accepted.
So this is when
When I
people
went in,
want
they
to
said, okay, you're there. So we sat through the whole thing and said, okay, jury.
Excited to be down here? Yeah.
Hi, Leah. How are you today? Good.
This is where I stand, this is where I conduct the meeting. And so we'll open the meeting and we're going to do the pledge. I got you to have your pledge.
It kind of skipped around.
Councilmember Patterson.
Hi there, how are you?
This is Councilmember Sayers.
How are you? What's your name?
No, I didn't.
Huh? Well.
Yeah.
We haven't had the chair.
Yeah, they're going to pull her over.
Just come and sit. 90% of it will mean nothing to you right up front, but if you listen to it, it'll start making sense.
And she'll know how to do the pledge.
Oh, right on. You gonna lead the pledge?
The pledge? You think you can do that? Yeah? Okay, well, I'll
Won't have to
invite
come
you.
up here.
I'll invite you up when I start the meeting. All right.
This is from my close friend, of course, she was running around. Yeah, we were down like waiting at the. Yeah, it was
Until they
pretty
get
cool.
you a chair?
I think it's this one right here.
Oh, I think I went to grab her a different one. Okay. They're gonna get you a different, oh, this is Councilmember Elliott. This is Aaliyah.
Hi, nice to meet you, Leanne. What grade are you in? Oh, that's actually a great to be in.
She's interested in city governance, so she wanted to come check out the city council meeting. She's in 4-H, and she was in student council for 2 years.
Oh, you kinda know.
Good.
Tom's got you a seat,
So
so
if
you
you're
can sit right
ever
over.
feeling that passion,
She's gonna lead us in the city.
How are you doing?
Good, how are you
Good.
doing?
Invite her.
Good.
Do we want to work this? Do you want to sit on the side? Or do you want to sit in between?
Which one do you feel more comfortable? Wanna sit in between?
Let's put you in between us and you can take notes.
Myra,
And I'll call you up when we're ready, okay?
you are welcome.
Oh, here's this one too, Myra.
Is all council sign this?
I didn't check.
I did sign it. And you got Steve, and you got Terry, and you got Jackie. Oh. Daryl? Daryl.
I was like, oh. All right, 7:30.
Give it to. The only one who hasn't is Councilmember Seela.
All right, it's 7:30, so we'll call this meeting to order, and I would like to invite a special guest up to help me lead the pledge. Aaliyah, would you like to join me? Stand right here, sweetie. All right, go ahead and start.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Aaliyah. All right, Lynn, will you do roll call?
Yes. Mayor Jacqueline Wells,
Here?
Vice Mayor Daryl Garner,
Here?
Councilmember Derek Elliott,
Here.
Councilmember Tanya Lumen,
Here.
Councilmember Terry Pattison,
Here.
Councilmember Steve Sanger,
Here.
Councilmember Bruce Seeloff. Thank you.
All right, moving on to the approval of the agenda. Councilmember Sanger?
I move to approve the February 4th, 2025 City Council agenda as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Lynn, when you're ready, will you open online vote, or any discussion? Sorry. All right, when you're ready, will you open online voting, please?
Online voting is open. Online voting has closed. The motion passes with 6 yeas.
All right, moving down to the approval of the consent agenda. Councilwoman Lumen?
I move to approve the consent agenda, February 4th, 2025, as presented.
Do I hear a second? Any discussion? All right, hearing none. Lynn, will you open online voting, please?
Online voting is open. Online voting has closed. The motion passes with 6 yeas.
All right, moving on to citizens' participation. This is a time set aside by Resolution 2C, 1996, and it sets a limit for public comment for 5 minutes, with the provision that the 5-minute time limit may be increased at the request of a council member or the public or any other council members, and it's subject to the council vote. Do I have any citizens' participation? Aaliyah, did you want to say anything? No? Okay. All right. Yvonne, will you please sign in and state your name for the record?
Rocket scientist figure out the, oh, there we go. Good evening, Council. I'm Yvonne Johnson with Carbon County Economic Development, and I am the Director. I was supposed to be on your agenda last council meeting, and I wasn't, so that's why I'm here. So I'm just going to real fast. It's not a big deal that I wasn't on the agenda. You guys pretty well know what I've been doing. You have received your quarterly report in ample time. I'm not going to go through it all. But just kind of want to give you a little updates as we go along. So upcoming Leadership Carbon County, we kicked off January 9th, and we will be going to Cheyenne on the 20th for the day at the with the legislators, which is going to be very exciting. Upcoming, so we have a couple of things. So as most of you probably already know, and if you've read my reports, Carbon County has been selected by the Wyoming Business Council, along with 5 other counties in the state of Wyoming, to be a part of an assessment for economic development, and also for training, board training, and site selectors. This consulting firm is from South Carolina. They will be doing round 2, February 18th, and Tom, Lou, and Tom Sarby, Lou Luscano, myself, have met and did a pre-meeting on the November 20th, and then we will be meeting again on the 18th. And so this is going to be a deeper dive, a plunge in from the results of the homework that I had to do. And the City of Rawlins has been very kind in helping me get this report together and to help the Insight team put their numbers, the buildings, the land, just, I don't even know. I just did what they said, and we're going to get the results of that report when they come on the 18th. On February 19th, the very next day, a consulting firm from Joplin, Missouri, has been hired by the Craig Hospital. This is going to be a meeting, a roundtable and how to improve our emergency management, emergency EMTs, SHWIMs. I have a whole group of people that an email sent out, and for a roundtable on the 19th. Again, the City of Rawlins is going to be in attendance to that meeting, and the Memorial Hospital, of course, they've accepted. So we've got quite a team. I was shocked by the response. I sent the email out, and it was within hours, over half of the group already accepted. So that tells me that we're very interested in providing, better service and in our emergency situation. So I'm excited to see what comes up from that. Rocky Mountain Power has sponsored me to go to the Wyoming Legislative, it's a leadership, Women in Leadership, Wyoming Women Legislative Caucus, February 26th and 27th. I'm very excited about that. I have made it pretty clear to my board that I really am not interested in applying for Leadership Wyoming. I feel that I'm kind of old by comparison, and I think our younger generation really needs. I mean, Pam there has told me I would get a lot out of it on a personal level, but I also think that we need to really build our younger generation and give that position or that role to them to have that opportunity to apply. But I did apply for the Wyoming Academy, and I will be notified mid-April if I got accepted or not. You may know, may not know, April, I'm going over my 5 minutes. April is the Federal Funding Summit, April 14th to the 17th. I encourage you to attend. They have taken out, if you have been there before, their consulting firm, the Haggerty team that was there, this is going to be Wyoming. This was a big request from us that have been going every year, that we want what is going on, what is offered in our county, our state. So this is really designated to funding that is specifically for us. Not that Haggerty Group didn't do a good job. They did a great job. They're doing a great job. But for us, trying to understand the whole grant process and what is being offered, this is going to be, I think, much better. Let's see. Met with the mayor, new mayor, and Hannah. I'm very, very excited. Not that it matters, but it does because I'm countywide. So I'm very happy to be back on track with them, and I never lost my footing with the community, but with their council and their government and their changes, it would made it very difficult and not something that my board felt that I needed to be, in the midst of. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay, I'm done. You have your report, your quarterly report. If there's anything, please, you know where to find me. I'm excited, you guys. There's a lot going on. I wish we could divulge, but please hang tight. We've got some good things happening countywide. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Any other?
I gotta go. Bye.
Any other public comment? All right, hearing none. We will move on to board appointments and the presentation of the employee of the fourth quarter of 2025. 2024. Oh, sorry, wrap it up last year. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, Honorable Council. We always look for excuses to get employees here so we can recognize them as employee of the quarter, kind of in secrecy. So I am really looking forward to the grant report on the recreation coming up a little bit later, but I would like to recognize for the employee of the quarter for the fourth quarter of 2024, Mr. Randall Flaming. So Randy is a shining example of what this community needs in order to have successful recreation department. He takes immense pride in the day-to-day activities and personal consideration into all aspects of the job. Whether he is running camps, coaching new refs, chalking the fields, or seeking additional help for the kids, Randy is always willing to spend the necessary time and extra attention to details to ensure everything runs smoothly. Coordinating several programs with both youth and adults throughout the year takes meticulous planning and organizing. In addition, he serves on several boards throughout the community and state to provide additional support where needed. The Rec Center and all activities association are just not a job, but they're his pride and joy. Thank you for all you do. We are so grateful and blessed for your hard work and dedication. Retirement check. Certificates. You can get one with your kids and.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you want him in?
Well, I want in there, but.
Try and get everybody. Okay, perfect. You really have to present a grant. Or you could switch it out.
I appreciate it. It's been very nice. It's a surprise. It's been going on, 4 years I've been with the city and the rec center, and been enjoying every bit of it. And I appreciate all the board support for what you guys do. I know it's not hard, not the easy thing. And I'm on the school board here in Rawlins, and I did it for 20 years in Nebraska, so I know what it means to be on a board and give your, undivided attention to a lot of things that's sometimes you don't want to do. Sometimes you do want to do, but it's great. Thank you for this, and I sure appreciate it, and then I'll go back to work.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. I can't think of a better person to deserve this award. All right, moving on to a Board of Adjustments appointment, and we have one applicant. And Councilmember Sand.
I move to appoint Don Woolley to the Board of Adjustments for a term ending January 31st, 2028.
Second.
All right, the motion's been made and seconded to appoint Don Woolley to the Board of Adjustments for a term ending January 31st, 2028. And Don, would you like to come speak to us about why you're interested in the Board of Adjustments?
Hey, thank you. I was just looking for a place to serve, and there was a vacancy, and so I thought it would be a good place for me to plug in and get to know a little bit more about the city and help out if I can.
Great, thank you so much for applying.
Appreciate it.
All right, any discussion? Oh, not yet. Any discussion? All right. Lynn, would you open online voting?
Online voting is open. Online voting has closed. The motion passes with 6 yeas.
Now's your time, Derek.
All right.
Thank you, Don. And just a reminder to the public that we have one board opening left, and it's the Park and Recreation Advisory Committee for an adult 3-year term of January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2027. All right, moving down to DDA Main Street and Hub reports. Are you
No, I'm not.
not it?
No, I thought she was going to be here. She said she was. She'd had to come from Cheyenne. So,
Yes, I'm sure the roads
I
are
thought you were going to call in, but I don't know.
All right. Well, we'll just go ahead and move on to city manager and staff reports. Tom?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple items tonight to share with you. We'd like to recognize retiring employees of the city that have been here multiple years and have had, great impact on the city. So tonight we'd like to recognize Nikki Epp, who's in our municipal court department. She has announced her retirement, and it was actually late last month. She has worked for the city since the 70s. She actually started at the outdoor pool at Washington Park, which is long before my time, but she started there and went on to be a water aerobics instructor, and then she was hired in 2010 as a part-time deputy clerk. So we just want to recognize her and thank her sincerely for her service and for her contributions to the city. The last item is just by way of update, but we are watching the legislation pretty close in Cheyenne. And there are certain bills that are really gaining traction that I would like to mention a little bit, even though they're not through the House and the Senate yet or come together. But the major topic at the legislature is property tax right now, and the exemptions from property tax. So that was passed through the vote when we had the primary election, that they were allowed to separate the residential property tax from the commercial. So the legislature's taking the next step with that, and what we could see is in Senate File 69, they are proposing a 25% exemption on residential property up to $1 million. So what that would essentially do is cut the property taxes by 25%. And as you know, with the property taxes and sales tax, that's what funds our city. So we're watching that really close. The House version of that bill is the House version 169, and what they, I believe it was third reading today, they're looking for a 50% exemption from property taxes, and with that, they are proposing that the state backfill half of that, so 25% back to the cities. So as we see it currently, either way, there would be a 25% reduction in the amount of our property taxes. Now, just as a quick calculation on that for us, and this is like I said, bound to change, we budgeted $575,000 in property taxes. 25% of that is $143,000. So we would be looking at a cut in our revenue of at least $143,000 as it stands today. And so we will take that into account with our budgeting and with our strategic planning, but we are talking sizable reductions in our revenue as a result of the property tax relief through the state. And we will continue to watch that and update council, but both of those are moving quickly through their respective chambers in Cheyenne. So, so with that, that's my report.
Thank you, Tom. Moving down to the city attorney report, or did anybody have any questions for Tom? Okay, moving down to city attorney report. Ms. Mayberry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, councilors. Just to follow up in regard to, I've already apprised council on the federal funding freezes. Just wanted to touch on that briefly. On January 27th, the Office of Management and Budget issued a surprise memo that directed all federal agencies to halt federal funding pending a review of numerous initiatives that were contrary to President Trump's policies. The intent was to freeze all federal funding effective the following day towards fulfilling President Trump's campaign promises to rein in a multi-trillion-dollar federal budget and eliminate certain programs. Several lawsuits were immediately filed by nonprofit groups in several states who objected to the freeze and argued that the funds had already been allocated by Congress and that a funding freeze would be devastating to nonprofit groups, states, and the American public in general. The OMB then rescinded the memo, but the White House issued a statement that only the memo was rescinded, but not the directives to the federal agencies restriction in regard to those executive orders. This past week, the courts in 2 of the most high-profile cases issued temporary restraining orders regarding the freezing, finding that the actions of the OMB were arbitrary and capricious, and that the OMB directives were improper methods to further the president's wishes. Additionally, the courts found that the actions violated the separation of powers by interfering with Congress's appropriations authority, referencing statutory provisions that restrict the executive branch from unilaterally altering federal funding decisions. Although the freeze has been halted, this is something that city staff continues to pay close attention to, and these developments are continually ongoing. And there are certain impacts that can be, that will affect the city. There are some direct funding for on some federally funded grants and projects, but there's also the pass-through funds that the city receives that are from federal funding. Don't have any updates at the moment, but just wanted to clarify if anybody has any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? All right, thank you. Moving down to City Council and WHAM updates. To start us off, I just want to welcome Aaliyah. She's our special guest tonight. She has an interest in city government, and so they reached out to have her here with us tonight, and it's a privilege to have her. She's served on her council at school for 2 years, so that's really cool. Does anybody have any updates or City Council WHAM updates they'd like to share? Councilwoman Lumen?
So the WHAM has always been official, as it gives out a lot of information. A couple of things I went to was Life Solutions and also a seminar on Wyoming suicide. There's many factors in suicide: isolation, mental health access, the culture of seeking help, value of minding your own business, right? The stigma of it, independence, climate. 9 months of winter does not make for a happy mind at times, and substance abuse. Wyoming is #1 in suicide, and I know the governor has, you're like twice the number of the United States as a whole. The governor has made that a priority. However, I'm not sure with this particular session if he will have any money to back up what he wants to do. There is a helpline, 811, for suicide. And the one class I went to, she gives out classes for free to cities or organizations about those things. The main thing, there's lots of warning signs. Main thing I would suggest to everyone is just notice the people you're around. You don't know if not just a hello and walk on by, but a small conversation with somebody where they feel noticed and not invisible, and how much that could change their decisions on things. It makes a difference. So try to notice the people around you and make that connection. If we fall upon harder times in the future, this number will only go up as a nation and as a state, and we will need each other. We'll need to be able to see each other and help each other through those things. On a lighter note, the key speaker was Andrew McCrae, who's gone all over, and he's done different interviews and things on the radio, wrote quite a few books about towns doing makeovers, and there's a book, it's on my to-read list, haven't got there yet, but it was very uplifting in the fact that towns can come up with creative ideas and creative financing to make those ideas work and bring more money and stability to their town. That was really a great thing. The other things, other than WHAM, I know, I just want to verify, we didn't okay the vacation schedule, correct? Tom? See, we didn't approve a vacation schedule, right? Or did we?
Madam Mayor, Councilman, no, we did not. That was
Okay.
removed from the consent agenda at the last meeting.
So we have it on the next one. And the other thing for my constituents specifically, on my street, there were 4 tires slashed. I know we had a couple of robberies, an incident of public fighting. If maybe, and if you're not prepared, I understand, but if the chief could have some kind of report to give to the town about, I don't know if the moon was just right or what was going on. It seemed like it all happened one time, but what happened and some of the challenges he's facing, because I know we are short officers. He's prepared?
Oh, thank you, Chief.
Council members, thank you. So it's important to keep the public updated, and we do that through our social media and at times through press releases. I have been interviewed on several of those instances by Bigfoot at Copeland. I will tell you that when investigations are ongoing, it's usually not a good idea to share too much information publicly. Mm-hmm. And once we have placed charges, the case then falls into the arena of the prosecuting entity in those cases. Briefly, we did have a robbery. A robbery is the taking of something from somebody else by force or threat of force. In this case, a gun was displayed at the Stinkers a few weeks ago on a Monday night on the east end of town. We believe that case, that's the first time we've had a robbery since I've been here. And I believe actually it's longer than that time period. It's been a long time since Rawlins has had a robbery. It's a very rare event in our community. In this particular case, we believe fairly strongly that the suspect came off the highway and got right back on the highway. What that means is that it's not related to the town of Rawlins, but it also means that our likelihood of figuring out who did it and successfully making an arrest is not very high. We did have a burglary as well. A burglary is usually breaking into a building, a dwelling, or a vehicle and then committing another crime, which is most likely a theft. There was a burglary at a local hotel a couple blocks from here. We did make one arrest in that case, and we are looking to identify a second suspect in that case. Which other ones were you asking about? I know there was an incident with an altercation that occurred in front of City Hall. It actually was an ongoing event that occurred at 3 different locations. Contrary to what I heard was posted on social media, which I don't have. All people involved were charged appropriately in that particular case. And that case was turned over to the county attorney's office.
And how many officers are we down?
So the Rawlins Police Department has authorized 19 sworn officers, which includes 1 chief, 3 lieutenants, 4 sergeants, and 11 officers. We have been short my entire tenure, but we are below critically short right now. We have 7 officer openings, and that's about to go to 8, which means we will only have 3 police officers.
Okay.
We're holding our own, but we are worn thin. The staff that we have has been operating this way since before I got here. Mm-hmm. They're incredibly tired. We are operating below our own minimum staffing. We're almost going to be at about half staffing total. The fact that we have a chief, 3 lieutenants, and 4 sergeants means that we are working the road and not doing the other things administratively that we should be doing.
Any questions for the chief, council, or Vice Mayor Gardner?
I could, this question, it's just a question. With being so short-staffed, we need to get your guys, like we do with Tom, relief. We're overworking everybody. Is this something maybe we could do with the MOU with the sheriff's department as a temporary thing until?
No. No, they're short-staffed as well. They typically only have 2 or 3 deputies covering 8,000 square miles.
They're short-staffed as well. Okay.
And you know, they only have maybe 20 deputies to cover a county bigger than 3 different states. The answer to our staffing is to staff up. I will also tell you that the Rawlins Police Department is one of the lowest paid in the entire state. We have a chart that I've shown many of you before. We've kept it updated. There's a number of jurisdictions across the state, in fact, many of them, that have over the past year understood that they needed to raise the salaries of their employees. And while I'm speaking specifically about the Rawlins Police Department, this really extends citywide. Rawlins does not pay well. And we have staffing issues citywide, and we have. In terms of, we already work closely with the sheriffs and the highway patrol.
Right.
We are also, the Rawlins Police is the only 24/7 law enforcement agency in the entire county. So in the overnight hours, our officers are out there alone.
So, and I guess what I'm trying to get at is is there anything we can do or to help at this moment? Because I know we can't get you instant relief, but is there something that could be done to, maybe we go to 2 o'clock, we end at 2 o'clock, or?
That would be a grave disservice to our community, and I'll tell you why. Let me just, I know most of you are somewhat familiar with my background, but I've been doing this for over 3 decades. And I've done it on the East Coast in a large department, and I've been here 3.5 years now. Some of this is kind of the Wyoming way. We are the least populated state in the country, so it makes sense that our populations are spread out. But here in Rawlins, it's condensed. Many times our officers are the first on scene for critical medical events. We recently had a award ceremony, and we gave out a number of life-saving awards. So if we were not on the road overnight, we would not be the first on scene. Anything that happens overnight, we'd have to get called out. Also, in policing, it's not always what we do that we get paid for. It's a lot of times what we might have to do, okay? And when we're not on a call, what that means is that our officers are out patrolling, right? The robbery at the Stinkers a few weeks ago, if that suspect had gotten off the highway and seen a police vehicle, I'm pretty sure they would have got back on the highway. And when we only have 2 cars out there, that's really thin. Taking them off the road increases our response times to life-saving incidents, life-threatening incidents. It totally prevents our prevention by being visible, by being seen, by being out there and patrolling. I think our city deserves more.
So what I'm looking for is not having where we overwork them and then we have an error on, from exhaustion, trying to get the relief. So are there programs where we could bring in, I don't know, temporary officers? There's nothing to help alleviate this.
Quite frankly, the only answer, and this is complicated by, in policing, it's a little bit different than other professions. We have to hire the right people who have a very specialized skill set. I'm not saying they're better or worse than anybody else, but it is a very specialized skill set. We're entrusting them with taking away people's freedoms. We're entrusting them with potentially taking another person's life to save a life. Quite frankly, the stakes don't get any higher. We have to hire the right people. The next step is to train them properly, and then we have to hold them accountable to do the job and to support them in doing it. Quite frankly, it's a national crisis. Policing is held to the highest standard, as we should be, and one of the ironies is that we understand that. But at the same time, nationally, police officers are not looked at as a profession. That's what's something that we have to address as a country. Locally, we have to hire the right people. Right now, we're not getting those applicants, which is also a nationwide trend. But when we're paying the lowest in the state, it's not helping. When we're overworking the people we have, that's not helping either. And then you factor in the time it takes to hire and train a police officer, which could be up to a year. You know, in many other professions, you can hire somebody and they're going to go to work the next day. In policing, we have to hire the right people. The training takes a long time. The hiring process takes a long time. The training takes a long time before they actually go out and start producing on their own. And then when we invest that and they don't stay, we start the process over, but we've also wasted quite a bit of time, money, and energy in doing so. So we have to address that. This is a serious issue. There really are no easy fixes to it. There's no shortcuts. And once again, what we're talking about is public safety, which obviously is a pretty in-depth topic.
Right. Thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Elliott?
Are there any positions on hold due to finances?
We have, is it 3 positions frozen right now? And for the last couple years, that's been the case. I've kind of accepted that in the budget processes because we can't even hire to get up to them to discuss unfreezing them. So the police department, in addition to working 24/7, being out there, taking a lot of risks upon themselves to keep everybody else safe, has also taken a hit for the city by freezing these positions.
So the 7 to 8 positions that you're down, does that include the 3 that are on hold?
Yes, yes it does. Yeah, we have a total of 11 officer positions. These are our frontline first responders. I will tell you, since I've been here, one of my lieutenants who's in charge of patrol has worked the street every single day I've been here that he's worked. And it's okay for him to do that. It's okay for any of us to do that. We are the police, and we've been doing that for a long time. But when my patrol lieutenant is working the street in place of a police officer or a sergeant, that means the other things he's supposed to be doing as a lieutenant, the administrative things, are not getting done.
Right.
And that's the case with the other 2 lieutenants as well. They're both incredibly overworked, yet they still work the street whenever they're needed. One of the other lieutenants is in charge of our investigations and the animal shelter. She's on call 24/7. She's our only investigator. And she's frequently working at the shelter on the weekends to keep the cages clean and put the dogs out. I really would be lost without the lieutenants. They're the ones that have really held the department together for the 3.5 years that I've been here.
I've seen in town, when they are arresting somebody or talking to somebody, the people are belligerent with the officers. They take a lot of abuse.
That is normal in our profession. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean it's okay. I will tell you that Wyoming is the friendliest, most well-behaved state that I've ever been to, which is one of the reasons I live here now. And I can tell you that they do. They take abuse, but they have thick skin, and I don't want to say it's acceptable. I don't want to say it's part of the job, but it is what we deal with every day. I will say that the amount that the officers endure here, while it's not forgivable,
Yeah.
is not nearly as bad as other places I've seen. Also, along those lines, when we only have 2 people working, our minimum staffing, and I almost fell down when I heard this, is 1 sergeant and 2 officers. We almost never have that. So if we have 2 people working, which is pretty much what we do right now, if one of them makes an arrest, or they both do, and one of them has to go process that arrest, they're out of service for several hours, leaving 1 officer by themselves.
Yeah.
There are many times where we have somebody at the hospital that somebody has to sit with, or somebody being processed to jail, where we have actually nobody in service or 1 officer in service. I know it's been a year plus. I worked a midnight shift, and it was just me and another sergeant, no officers. We made an arrest for a domestic violence incident. That sergeant now, and by the way, we came close to having a physical confrontation during that arrest, and there was nobody coming to help us.
Yeah.
Okay. That is not what I am used to. I've been on calls back east where literally 100 police officers could show up. But here, what you got is what you got, basically. Fortunately, we were able to successfully de-escalate that and talk our way through it, but the sergeant now was tied up for several hours at the jail processing the arrest, leaving me by myself. Well, I can handle myself, but by yourself when there's literally nobody else coming is not a really comfortable feeling. And then I got a call for a drunk who buried their Jeep on the train tracks. So I had a DUI on the train tracks. Fortunately, that person was so drunk they were fairly compliant, but had they not been, I would have been out there by myself. And I have to tell you, as a leader, the last person I worry about is myself. And I tell you that story because it scares the hell out of me knowing that the people I'm in charge of leading are out there doing that same thing.
Right. So you say a year of training. If there was an officer or somebody in law enforcement in another county or another state, would that still be a year training before going on the streets in Rawlins? Or
Laterals are slightly different. So a lateral in the state of Wyoming, we are certified through the state post police officer standards and training. Lateral officers, and I was one myself when I came here, I was certified in another state. There's a state process, and they call it challenging the post requirements. So for a lateral, they do not have to go through the entire academy, which in Wyoming is 3 months. They can take, I think it was 40 hours of online classes I had to take, and then 3 or 4 days at the academy that was specific to Wyoming law, use of force, domestic violence here in Wyoming. At the end of it, I had to take a test, and I was in a class with about 30 other people who were laterals into Wyoming. Most of them were officers. Another one was a police chief. He and I were the 2 chiefs in that class. And if you pass the test, which I was, a little nervous going into, but I did fine. They will waive your need to go to the police academy and certify you within the state of Wyoming as a peace officer. So we have been targeting laterals, and for the life of me, I cannot figure out why more people are not flooding into Wyoming to be police officers for the same reasons that I came here. Why people are not flooding into Wyoming from places like the entire West Coast or other cities around the country where the police are really especially treated horribly is a mystery to me. I don't know. I haven't figured that out yet. But we have been targeting laterals, and we're not having so much luck.
And it could be the pay based on the housing.
And I will tell you, I came from the DC area. It was very expensive.
Yeah.
The quality of life is about the same. I was paid a lot more there, but I was also taxed a lot more there, and the cost of living was a lot more there. Housing was just through the roof and everything else. So while the pay is lower here, and I do think pay scares some people away, but Wyoming doesn't have a state income tax, and your dollar does go, unless you live in Jackson, your dollar does go farther here than it does in a lot of these other places where the police are paid a lot more. But if we're looking at Wyoming, and we're looking at who we're competing with, I can tell you that both Laramie and Rock Springs and Green River are both starting about $10 more an hour, or a little bit under $10 an hour more than we are for no experienced police officers. That's hard to compete with.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Thank you, Chief Ward.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Oh, sorry. I just had something about when.
Oh,
sorry.
Vice Mayor Garner, go ahead.
You're good.
Is that not for me?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks. Council members, thank you very much for your time.
So during WHAM, I went to the grant assistant program where they kind of go over how you can apply for grants and everything. I sent an email out just a minute ago for everybody. Share it with anybody you can. The grant assistant program does have a Connect Hub where you can go in and dig through the available grants, and it's kind of like BoardDocs. You can keyword. So if you just search water or sewer, it will pull up grants that are related to those. And the cool thing about this is, if I remember correctly, this is all grants that are available for Wyoming specifically. So you're not having to go through and filter out Colorado, Montana. It's just Wyoming. Another thing that is cool about this department, and I think it's going to be a great help for everybody, is once you find a grant, you can reach out to their team and they will, in a sense, kind of guide you on how to get in the right place to applying, or review it with you to make sure you're going in the right direction. So this is a great presentation. I thought it was great. I watched it the last SWAM session. They had another. It's kind of the first time they kind of disclosed it at WHAM and showed everybody, and this one was way more in depth. The tool is awesome. It's super simple to use. So I did send the email out, and if you guys want to send it to anybody, I think that'd be awesome. And then I just had a question for Leah, if you want to answer. What's your favorite thing about student council? What's your favorite thing to do?
Well, there's a lot of stuff that we do, but my favorite thing is probably when we get to watch movies and eat donuts.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
I want to go to one of your student councils. Well, thank you.
All right, moving on. We do not have any unfinished business, so we'll move on to new business. Councilmember Elliott.
I have a report from my council. Or not from my council, from my ward.
Oh, let's go back to city council updates. Go ahead.
And so there's a lot here. I'm going to email it to you. And also, should I email it just to you, Tom?
Go ahead and
How does that
email it
work?
to all of us.
Okay.
That'd be great.
So I met with some people from Ward 1. And I just jotted down some things that they were saying. The golf course is a waste of money, always in the red. Golf course taking money from different projects not being completed. So this was another question. How many current projects do we have? And what is the percentage of completion for each of those projects? How many memberships there's only a few more. How many memberships are there at the golf course? Golf course implementation affected the city workers with insurance. They were not having to pay a part of their insurance, but then after the golf course went in, the money wasn't there to help them with their insurance, where they would not have to pay for insurance. Overtime, they lost their overtime pay, and that created a comp pay in place of overtime. Then the comp pay was directed to them instead of them making the decision for their comp pay. Another question, was the land donated? Another question, was the transit line a grant? And if so, it should go to the treatment plant for citizens. And all of this is what I heard, not saying that it's factual. Releasing water into Peking Reservoir when the water line break caused the city to go into water restrictions. So the person also said, is there a map of lines, of the water lines, and what lines were put in with grant money? They'd also like to see the grant. Repair of streets. Are contractors coming to Rawlins to do the road work? If so, can we do it with city workers? Maybe hire more street department employees. How much to maintain the golf course on off season? So what are we paying now in the off season? FEMA, people are very concerned about FEMA. with the insurance raising. Now, south side, they're, because of the FEMA, they say south side is dry, but in the Highland Hills area, people have water pumps in their basement, and I don't live in the Highland Hills area, but they're on a water table, so they should be paying for flood insurance versus the other side where there's no water. Deer in town, they're carrying diseases. Golf simulator should go to the rec center instead of building a new building. I didn't know if there was another building being built for the golf simulator. But they said that the golf simulator, if there's one, it should go inside the rec center. Should have a refuge for the deer, or we should look at attractions to pull people off the interstate to come into Rawlins to spend money so we get more money. Property given to the city from the county behind the Carbon County Jail could be used for some sort of attraction for people. Last thing, needs communication to residents that do not have internet access and are not physically able to attend meetings. I'm thinking people that are immobile, but they still want to be, they're still part of the community, so they want the information. And that's all I have.
Thank you. All right. Moving down to new business. This is to approve the mayor to create the committee to adopt the fire civil service rules. Do I hear a motion? Councilwoman Lumen?
I move to have the mayor appointment of 3 members of the governing body to serve on a committee tasked to adopt the fire civil service rules in accordance with Wyoming statute 15-5-119.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. I will go ahead and hand it over to Chief Robinson, and then we can discuss as a council.
Madam Mayor and Council, this is just off of state statute that we have to ask you guys to have 3 members to meet with the Civil Service Commission to go over the changes that have been there. The commission has already met. All the rules have been changed and are ready to change, those kind of things. It's been approved by our lawyers, all that fun stuff. So it's a matter of meeting with council to go over all of that so they approve, and then we'll bring it back to the body for a vote.
Great. So very similar to what we did with the police
It's
recently.
the exact same
Do
statute.
I have
so.
any interest among the council who is, yeah, I know you can't, of who would be willing to serve? Okay. All right.
With me serving, I have to say that I'll be leaving the hospital on February 28th, so I'll be free after that. I don't know when that time frame is that you're going to meet.
So we would basically pick a date and have a meeting. And if we need to have more than 1 or 2, whatever we need to, we can do that. Like I say, all the changes are there. It's more or less informing you of what the council, council as far as what's been changed and those kinds of things. Similar to what you saw in like the purchase policy, we have the whole red line thing and all that, so it's going to be very simple to walk through that. As far as the changes now, understanding the changes, that might be a whole different, we'll just have to take time to go through that, so.
Any discussion on the 3 that have offered their services? All right, so
Any particular, would you just email us 3 so we can pick a date, or?
We will, yeah,
You can do
I'll get
that.
with Lynn and we'll put together,
Have
because we have
jobs and all
the
that
commission
stuff?
that we also have to get together with and find a date that works and those kind of things, so.
Great, and how long do you suspect the meeting should last?
7 minutes.
7 minutes?
I have no idea.
That would be amazing.
I would anticipate a couple of hours.
Couple hours, okay.
At least initially to go through those, have time to explain the changes and what's taking place and those kind of things. So, yeah,
I'm joking, of course, but I don't know what that time frame will be.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Oh, Councilmember Elliott?
Would you be able to send that out so we can review it before the meeting?
You already have that in your.
It should already been
in the
attached
okay.
and those kind of things, but,
It's in board docs.
yeah, so we can,
Okay.
for those three members, I can get a hard copy if you want. So you have that to go through those kind of things either way.
Yeah, as long as it's on here, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you go on down.
All right. If there's nothing else, Lynn, will you open online voting?
Online voting is open.
Mine didn't come up, so I'm abstaining. Oh, there it just came up.
Thank you. Online voting has closed. The motion passes with 5 yeas and the one abstain. The one abstain was Councilmember Patterson.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right. Moving down to the approval of entering into a contract with Ayers and Associates, Inc. out of Cheyenne, Wyoming for professional environmental services for the city of Rawlins for the Brownsfield grant. Do I hear a motion? Councilmember, Vice Mayor Garner. Whew.
I move to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Ayers and Associates Incorporated out of Cheyenne, Wyoming for professional environmental services for the city of Rawlins, Wyoming, Brownfield Community-wide assessment grant.
Second.
All right, the motion has been made and seconded to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Ayers and Associates. Do we have any discussion? City Manager Tom?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. So this is the contract for the Brownfields grant that we received. And we selected Ayers and Associates a few months back as our contractor, and all that we're asking for tonight is approval of that contract so that we could sign that and enter into a contract with them. The work will begin on this immediately following the signing of the contract.
Great. Any discussion? All right. Then will you open online voting, please?
Online voting is open. Online voting has closed. The motion passes with 6 yeas.
All right. Moving down to a resolution approving and adopting the 2024 City of Rawlins Water Master Plan Level 1 study of September 2024. Do I hear a motion? Councilmember Sanger.
I move to approve and adopt the 2024 City of Rawlins Water Master Plan Level 1 study of September 2024 conducted by WWC Engineering in association with Hinckley Consulting.
Second.
All right. The motion's been made and seconded to approve and adopt the 2024 City of Rawlins Master Plan Level 1. And City Manager Tom Sarby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as you're aware that the City of Rawlins had a Level 1 Master Water Plan performed by the Wyoming Water Development and WWC Engineering. We had several public hearings on this to where their executive director came and spoke. Tonight, all that we're asking for is to adopt that and to accept that master plan. I have that here, and I'm happy to answer any questions because I'm sure council has heard many times about the contents within it. We just are asking for official acceptance of that master water plan.
Any Councilmember Elliott?
Will this affect the citizens any by increasing any of their water rates?
Madam Mayor, Councilman Elliott, so within here, they have identified priority 1 and priority 2 projects. So during the study, they went out and they looked at the infrastructure and those different things, and that total number is just under $50 million that we have like immediate needs for. The current cash reserves within the water fund are about 2 million of that. And so over the next few years that we have, we'll have to make up 48 million plus interest. And so, yes, it will probably affect the water rates in that we're probably looking at future increases in water rates to be able to afford to do these projects. And they are critical projects. We are in a crisis.
Any further discussion? Okay, Lynn, will you open online voting, please?
Online voting is open. Online voting has closed. The motion passes with 5 yeas and 1 nay. The 1 nay was Councilmember Elliott.
All right, moving down to a resolution authorizing the emergency purchase of 2 replacement river pumps for the pretreatment plant and other irrigation. Councilwoman Lewin?
I move to approve the emergency resolution for the purchase of 2 replacement river pumps for the pretreatment plant and other irrigation from Arvada Pump Company, Arvada, Colorado, in the amount of $139,448 from the Water Enterprise Fund.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded to approve the emergency resolution for the purchase of 2 replacement river pumps for the pretreatment plant and other irrigation from Arvada Pump Company. I'll turn it back over to you, City Manager Sarby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So last council meeting, we had a presentation on the condition of the 2 pumps at the river pump station, and both of those are currently not working. They're not operable. And so we had a discussion with council, and council approved the expenditure for those. With the dollar amount of those overhauls, it would necessitate the bidding process, and what we're asking for tonight is an emergency declaration so that we can go past that bidding process and actually enter into a contract to have those, those repairs, those overhauls done. It takes up to 18 weeks to have those overhauls done, and we would be looking well into the spring season where we need the water both at the golf course and the pretreatment plant. And so what we're asking for tonight is just the permission to go past the bidding process with an emergency declaration. So.
All right, any Councilmember Elliott?
I have concerns for my ward about the pumps pumping water into the golf course. I explained to, didn't give anybody any direction, but just explained that these pumps also pump water into the water treatment plant, and that they're a necessity for that.
Correct.
And I'd hate to ask, how much will those pumps be pumping water into the golf course? Because is that the only water that's going to the golf course? Is the ones being pumped from that transfer station?
Madam Mayor, Councilman Elliott, the majority of the water used at the golf course does come through these pumps.
Okay.
There are other methods that we could get water to the golf course, but it really is not sufficient to keep the turf and the different things alive. And so, so yes, it's not the sole source, but I would say it's a necessary source for the maintenance of the turf.
Are the pumps and were they put in with a grant? And if so, is there any grant money that would be able to go to them for the repair?
To my knowledge, they were not put in with a grant. They were put in several years ago. And we would, at this point, they're not working. And so to go out to look for grant funds at this point would put a lot of things at risk. We're not aware right now of any grant funding available specifically for repairs for those pumps. That's not to say that we couldn't do research and go out to find that, but at this point, there isn't any readily available grant funding for those pumps.
And another question is, how much water per gallon are we able to pump out? I was thinking you can pump out as much as you want, but is there a certain amount of gallons that you have a restriction?
That would go back to the amount of water rights that we have in the Platte River. So it is restricted by the water rights that we have in there.
I would assume that we would first make sure that the water for the citizens would be the priority, and then a secondary would be the golf course.
Absolutely. The pre-treatment plant would operate on that.
Councilmember Patterson's next.
I'm reading here that are you going to rebuild these pumps, or are you buying new pumps?
Madam Mayor, Councilman Patterson, these are going to be rebuilt. So we're doing an overhaul on those. They are not going to be new pumps.
So we're pulling the old ones out, sending them to Colorado, wherever it's at, and we're going to rebuild them and then put them back in?
Put them back in, correct.
Okay.
Oh, just, Nikki would like to.
Hi, Council and Council, Madam Mayor and Council. Sorry, I just wanted to add a little insight to that. These two river pumps, their main priority is the emergency backup for the out-south water reservations. That is their first priority. They pump water to the golf course to ensure that the golf course is not taking treated water. So the golf course uses strictly straight I was gonna say straight sewer water, straight river water, so that it's not taking that away from the citizens. So I think that's pretty important to put in that knowledge base.
What is
Councilmember Elliott.
oh, I'm sorry. What is, oh, the heck did that guy tell me? Turbulence or something like that?
Turbulence?
Not
Turbidity?
Turbidity,
Yeah.
yes, the cloudiness of the water.
So does that affect the water being pumped to the water treatment station?
Absolutely not.
It's going there to remove that.
Oh, okay.
So when I'm sorry, ma'am.
Yes.
Me too.
Go ahead, Councilmember Singer.
Don't let me stand here with my camera. So when they pump the water out, it has turbidity in it. It has dirt, particles. They pump it up to the pre-treatment plant. They remove the particles. From there, it goes into the main plant where they sterilize it and add chlorine and what have you to kill bacteria. That turbidity is what chews the pumps up. It does it to Sinclair, to the refinery, all the time. And it costs them a lot of money to repair those pumps yearly, pretty much, right? So that's what they're doing. They're pumping that water up to the pre-treatment plant, cleaning it. You don't have to do that to the golf course. You can just send it down that line, pump it out, let the particles fly through the air, they land on the grass. You're just adding extra dirt.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But in order for us to use it, it has to go through the pre-treatment plant, into the main plant, and then on to the city. And that's its job. That's what it's primarily, it's the job that it does.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? All right. Lynn, will you open online voting, please?
Online voting is open. Online voting has closed. The motion passes with 6 yeas.
All right, moving on to item E, a resolution authorizing and amending the City of Rawlins purchasing policy and adopting the new City of Rawlins purchasing policy in its entirety. Do I hear a motion? Councilmember Singer.
You're not gonna hear the motion.
Okay.
This is a rather long document that we really haven't had time to fetter through and read. And I would like that opportunity. So what I would say is I'd like to postpone this just to the next meeting. Give us time to sit down and read the document from beginning to end, so that we have an idea of what does it say. I mean, we know what the red lines mean and what they're taking out, but there's a lot of purple.
Yes.
And I want an opportunity to read the purple.
So do you have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to postpone the resolution authorizing the amendment to the city for the purchasing policy as presented.
Second.
All right. The motion's been made and seconded. Do you have discussion?
Yes, because I had a few other questions about the policy as well, so giving us another week will help. I can.
My question to you, Tom, is will that cause any heartburn in the timeframe?
Madam Mayor, we are looking at water projects currently, and there is also some requirements in there for bid bonds for like local purchases and things. And we have been holding off on those purchases or pursuing that. But it makes perfect sense to me to wait for a couple more, because you are correct. That is a sizable document.
Okay. Councilmember or Vice Mayor Gardner?
Would we, excuse me, would we postpone to a specific date?
You can only postpone to a specific date. I said the next
Oh,
meeting.
you did say
Yeah.
the next meeting, sorry.
If we table it, it can sit there for years.
Okay.
So,
Yep,
but
you
we're
did say
postponing
next
to a
meeting.
very specific time, which is just the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Lynn, do you want to do online voting, or would you rather do a voice?
I just changed the motion, so.
Great. Go ahead and open online voting, please.
Online voting is open. Online voting has closed. The motion passes with 6 yeas.
All right, moving down to an executive session. Do I hear a motion? Councilwoman Lewin?
I move to enter into executive session at 8:45 p.m. per Wyoming Statute 16-4-405 A9 to consider or receive any information classified as confidential by law.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, Lynn, when you're ready, please open online voting.
Online voting is open. Online voting is closed. The motion passes with 6 yeas.
All right, going into executive session.
Time for donuts in a movie.
No. Movie and a dinner.
Yeah, there you go. So, yeah, I didn't hear it. I was thinking we had to say this date. So, because that's what I had written down on here. And then you're right, you said next meeting.
Thank you.
So, thank you so much. That's very
This is one of those ones you go,
Madam Mayor.
we should probably spend some time.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, I'm just giving away
obviously.
this part.
Yeah. Tom, you're not coming to, you don't, do you care? Oh, do you want
It's
dinner?
just, it's just a
Court's everywhere.
Adopted it, and
Do you want
this
dinner?
hasn't
So
happened
that's the
before.
question you asked. Tom, you
Yeah.
say, have you
You
already
think you should go?
developed the policy?
Oh, it's fine, yeah,
Yeah, okay.
absolutely,
And-
absolutely. I just keep it posted on.
Okay, then we know that you've not.
All right.
Because I meant to ask that.
Oh, yes. You add me.
Sorry.
You get home Friday.
There you go.
I don't even know.
What was Friday?
Oh, I went to that. So
Did you go to the?
I did, and then I went to the hospital to pick up some stuff for this hospital.
Oh, that's right. I went down to Denver and I'm sitting there going, this isn't so bad. And we're sitting there, we went and had dinner and went back to the room and looked out about 45 minutes later. There was already 2 inches of snow. So we went driving around a little bit. This is gonna be fun as much as rain was. Oh, come on.
My drive was fine.
6 hours driving from there to here.
Oh, no, you're good. So, what I was,
Bye. Here, I'll write that down for you before. You can do it, will you just email it to me? Yes. Then I'll remember tomorrow to email him. Yes.
I'll also add it to the actual list.
We already work really
Sweet,
closely
thank
with
you.
them.
Like I did for.
Delaney, no. Sarah, no.
Yeah, you
So,
have four, you
yeah.
have 4 youth, that's pretty awesome. They all show up, that'd be cool.
There is not a lot because the prison, the courts, this is their holidays. And they do back this up a lot.
I don't like talking when I'm not
But
expected.
opening that
Because
door
then
would
I thought,
cause more harm than good. It wouldn't solve
You did
the
great.
problems.
well, and I was just thinking of that, just that immediate, just, because
Does it
it's,
need to plug in?
it's getting to the point where.
I'm gonna unplug mine, so that it's, this cord is too short. I don't know. Yeah, I think what happened is, when we bought them the first time, it came with an extension, and when they bought them again, they didn't buy the longer one.
I'm always available.
Still like what's down there?
We are always still on this.
You should retire from Myra's office. So you can
You're welcome. I need to send an email. I can't forget to send an email.
Went longer than I thought, Tom.
Yeah, we did.
I thought, oh, this is,
We went past 9.
at least we're closer.
Yeah, at least it's not past 11 yet.
This is a nice set when you walk in here.
How much would it be to soundproof that room?
Before we went out.
All right, Councilwoman Lemon.
I move to come out of executive session per Wyoming statute 16-4-405, A9 at 9:07 PM.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, it's been motioned to come out of executive session per Wyoming statute 16-4-405 at 9:07
7.
PM. Any discussion?
Online voting is open.
Thank you, Lynn.
Online voting has closed and motion passes with 7 yeas.
Moving on to the executive, sorry, approval.
I said 7 by mistake, I
Oh,
apologize.
you're good. Moving on to the approval of the executive session minutes of January 7th, 2025. Do I hear a motion? Councilmember Gardner, or Vice Mayor Gardner.
I move to approve the executive session minutes of January 7, 2025, regular city council meeting as presented or amended.
Second.
All right. The motion has been made, moved to approve the executive session, or minutes of January 7th, 2025. Any discussion? All right. Lynn, will you open online voting?
Online voting is open. Online voting is closed, the motion passes with 6 yeas.
All right, moving down to another executive session minutes of January 21st, regular city. Councilmember Singer.
I move to approve the executive session minutes of January 21st, 2025, regular city meeting, council meeting as presented.
Second.
Okay. The motion has been moved to, or made to approve the executive session minutes of January 21st, 2025. Any discussion? All right. Lynn, will you open online voting?
Online voting is open. Online voting has closed, motion passes with 5 yeas and 1 abstain. The 1 abstained was Vice Mayor Gardner.
Are there any objections to matters discussed in the executive session? Okay, seeing that there were none, we will, with no further business that needs to be brought before the council, we'll adjourn at 9:10 PM. And our next meeting will be at February 18th, 2025.
Thank you.
Actually.